As you guys know, I've had a couple of different conversations on this podcast regarding the world of sports betting. And today we're bringing on a guest. His name is Art Manteris. He's the author of The Bookie, How I Bet It All on Sports Gambling and Watched an Industry Explode. If you're on YouTube, you'll see that on the video right here. And he's in the Sports Betting Hall of Fame. He was a bookie for years and years and years, and he has a lot of experience in this industry, but he also has so much insight that's super important for us. If you're a sports fan worrying about the integrity of the game right now when you see these scandals popping up, he's going to give us some insight from his perspective on what he thinks the leagues should be doing a little bit differently and what teams and players should be doing based on his experience. And I would also encourage you guys to go get a copy of his book. Hopefully by after the time you listen to this interview, you'll be interested in catching his book. Go check it in the links in this description. But I really hope you guys enjoy this one. Great stories, great insight from this man, Art Manteris, who is in the Sports Betting Hall of Fame. So get ready. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time.
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. 9 years running into this podcast. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Wherever you're tuning in from, thank you guys so much. If this is your first time, welcome aboard. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys listening and supporting. So if you are tuning in for the first time, please hit that follow button on whichever podcast platform that you're listening on. We're in 183 countries. All 50 states have listened to the podcast. So just hit that follow button because we come to you every week with new episodes. You can follow me on social media if you'd like to follow there and just kind of be part of the community. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Now, as you guys heard in the introduction, super interesting topic for me. And as those who have listened before will understand why. We're going to be talking about the world of sports betting, just sports gambling in general. And we're going to be bringing on a man himself who is an expert in this field. His name is Art Manteris, and we're excited to talk to him. So Art, thanks for joining the show, sir.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, so Art, let's do a little bit of a background here, just kind of like rewind the clock, if you will, of like when you yourself, got into the entire sports gambling world.
Yeah, I got into the sports gambling world almost at birth in Pittsburgh. Grew up in Pittsburgh with a family that was had deep roots in the gambling community around Pittsburgh, both as bettors and bookmakers. And my uncle and some family members had moved to Las Vegas, and I transferred to UNLV from the University of Pittsburgh in 1978. Finished my education out here in Las Vegas, intended to go back to Pittsburgh or Los Angeles. I was pursuing something in Los Angeles at that time too, which was equally intriguing, a career as a stuntman, but nevertheless fell in love with the sportsbook industry as a college student, where I started working part-time. Stayed in the industry, never left, worked continuously for 45 years in the sports gaming industry, saw a ton of changes, a ton of growth, and had a really, really exciting and fun career.
Wow. So yeah, it goes a little bit back, like to the whole, it goes back in time. So you got some experience here. And so that's obviously a big piece of what you've put into your book, The Bookie, How I Bet It All on Sports Gambling and Watched an Industry Explode. This book, I want to kind of tap into this a little bit. Some of the stories are just like what the guests can learn when they read your book. Tell me something on this one, Art, based on your experience and what's in the book. What's a sports story? One story from the book that will hook your listeners in like 60 seconds. Is there something from there?
Well, there's a lot about Billy Walters, who had a very successful book last year, and I do chronicle some of my dealings with Billy Walters and other real high-end professional gamblers. But the most important story for me, when I think back, and I've been asked this a few times by some friends, and I tell them that the most compelling story, in my opinion, is the epiphany that I had as a bookmaker during the build-up to the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight. Now, I was very involved in boxing promotions, both at Caesar's Palace and Las Vegas Hilton and Hilton hotels. And I never gave it another thought. It was perfectly fine with me being part of the promotion, signing the fights, promoting the fights, etc., while simultaneously being a big sports bookmaker in Las Vegas. But then all of a sudden, I was confronted with the biggest dilemma of my career, and that was when I learned before the fight that Pacquiao was going into the fight with a severely injured shoulder, and I've had tips a million times over the years, but nothing like this. This was from a very reliable source and compelling reasons why it contained compelling reasons why Pacquiao was not prepared to fight and could not win the fight. And now I'm going into fight weekend with a ton of liability built up on the fight, and then I did what I had to do as a bookmaker, and I reversed my position on the fight. I liked Pacquiao in that matchup a long time. I always thought he had a good chance against Mayweather. I thought his style would be difficult for Mayweather. Mayweather's a terrific fighter. I actually had signed him to his first title fight at the Las Vegas Hilton, so I'm well aware of how talented he was. It was just a style matchup that I thought Pacquiao had a good chance. So I went into fight week needing Pacquiao quite a bit, but by fight time, my position had reversed. But I did walk away from that fight with an epiphany that you can't do both, or you shouldn't do both. And I was on a speaking tour. I speak at a lot of gaming conferences and so forth. And from that point forward, I always told everybody that there has to be a very clear and distinct separation between participating in sports and gambling on sports. And it should never be allowed for anybody to do both. And the leagues love that message. You know, I worked for the NBA for 10 years on the side as a security consultant. And that message was extremely well received. But after PASPA, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, was repealed, everything changed. And the league's positions changed. Mine didn't. I still believe that there needs to be that clear separation. But nobody else seems to gravitate towards that message any longer.
So interesting, though. That's interesting. And actually, that's a funny story. I didn't know the Pacquiao thing, because back then I don't participate in sports gambling anymore, but at that time I actually did. And I'm okay saying this now, but that was before it was legalized in the United States at the time that I was betting on it. So I was betting on it through Bovada, if anybody remembers those offshore things. So I'm okay. I'll tell everybody yeah, I did that. I actually bet on Pacquiao to win that. It was one of those fights that I actually put money down on, thinking that and I didn't know he had a torn labrum. And
yeah. So how did you feel after the fight when you found out that he needed surgery immediately?
Pretty frustrated. See, that was where I was like, Art, what's funny is I started thinking I was irritated because it was a money thing for me, right? And then also I couldn't tell as a boxing fan if that was just one of his excuses of why he lost the fight, right? So you hear all the injuries post-fight all the time, but I couldn't tell. But I was super irritated about it as a person who had invested their money into a potential win, And so, yeah, it's interesting you brought that up, because that was one of those experiences where I was a little bit shook because I didn't know that was never disclosed prior. And obviously, right, if it's disclosed prior, you change your mind.
It was disclosed in the post-fight press conference.
Correct.
Immediately after the fight, it was disclosed that, and actually there was blame pointed towards the Nevada Athletic Commission for not allowing him to have a steroid injection before the fight. Well, that's against the rules, and he shouldn't have gone into the fight if he needed a steroid injection to fight.
So interesting. Yeah. And I always thought, Art, is funny because I had labrum surgery on my shoulder. So I know exactly. People are like, oh, labrum, whatever. They just hear it. But I'm like, that hinders anybody. I was like, dude, I couldn't move I injured mine boxing. So I know exactly what it's like. So it's so funny you brought that up. But I want to ask a question here. So when it became legalized in the United States across the board for the most part, right? When that became a thing, I actually did a podcast on this by myself years and years ago about the integrity of the game. That's literally what it was called. The episode was just about that, because my biggest fear, Art, was literally that. I mean, we've heard about point shaving from referees. You hear that stuff. I'd been around the game a little while, just kind of studying it. And my biggest fear was if we're dumping this in legally and they have access to some of this, it was going to trickle down. And I want to ask you that, I obviously know that you understand how the separation occurs, but we hear these scandals. I had Matt Boyer on the show talking about the players that were gambling and stuff, and the guardrails he set as a bookie. And and all this stuff. But like, how do we maintain the integrity of the game when it's all over the place? Now there's billions of dollars being spent. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. And when we controlled the only full-scale sports wagering in America, here in Las Vegas, in Nevada, we did a very good job at protecting against these types of scandals that are so widespread today. There was a few incidents that arose from time to time, and I actually had a consulting firm do an analysis of how many games were corrupt or significantly accused of being corrupted, and they came back with a report that estimated over the 90s, the 10-year period of the 90s, that 0.01% of games were potentially tainted by scandal, and you know it was not a bad track record for us here in Nevada, but it's far different today. The circumstances are so different, and the opportunities are so widespread. You know, when some of these recent scandals broke, I heard a number of people saying, including Governor Christie, who I respect quite a bit and am grateful to for a lot of things, and ironically was inducted into the SBC Sports Gambling Hall of Fame with Governor Christie in 2019. But I heard him say in an interview not too long ago that the legal industry, the legal sports betting industry, is what's protecting the integrity of the game and reporting these scandals. Now, there's absolutely some truth to that historically, but that's not the case today. Today, these are crimes of opportunity, unfortunately, and gambling is so widespread. And the message that the leagues are putting out is so hypocritical, in my opinion. I love the leagues. Don't get me wrong. I love the product. I love a lot of things that they do. They do very, very well. But the message to their players, when the players walk in and they see sportsbook advertising on the marquee and maybe even a gambling company logo on the jerseys in certain sports, or and in-play wagering updates all through game broadcasts and so forth. And then they tell the league, and then they tell their players, stay away from gambling. It's so evil. And yet they're participating. You know, they have official sponsorships and partnerships with various gaming companies, and so that message just cannot stand, in my opinion. It's something's got to give. They can't be criticizing and voicing such opposition to sports gambling on one side and participating in sports gambling now on the other side.
I totally agree with that. There was a big discussion on this exact same topic of, like, you know, media outlets like my own, right? Like podcasts and whatever, but bigger podcasts that are like, they're sponsored by FanDuel or they're sponsored by whatever it is, you know, these big gambling networks, and they're promoting it without even realizing what that could. And then here they are talking about the scandals on their show about how bad it is, yet they're still sponsored by and getting a big chunk of change from people using their affiliate codes on their own network. So it's like almost it's like counterproductive there. It's like you can't have both at some point, you know what I mean? And so I like that concept. It's just, how do we get there, I guess, is like the money. That's where I struggle a little bit, Art, just like knowing they're getting paid from these big time sponsors, and these, you know, you get a patch on your jersey, you get all this, and the media networks get paid to talk about it. The teams, the leagues get paid to talk about it or to have them. What do we do do they simply just have to cut ties with them and find new sponsors? It feels like they don't need them for the money. They've got other people that be willing to spend the money to, you know, pay into the leagues. I just have a hard time. Like, I don't know what we need to do to actually make that change happen.
Well, you know, if you look back historically and read some of the things that Commissioner Goodell, NBA Commissioner Stern, Tagliabue before Goodell, Bud Selig of Major League Baseball, they were so critical of the gambling industry in Nevada and elsewhere, and their concerns were so great about protecting the integrity of the game, and their words now seem to have been completely lost, completely forgotten. And if there's an answer I think that the leagues have to do it themselves. They have to recognize that the integrity of the game is the most important thing of all, and without that, they won't have anything. And you know who said that first? And I've come to learn is Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky, the famous old gambler, bookmaker of the mafia in the 1920s and 30s and beyond. And he himself was quoted many times as saying, not about casino games and about sporting events, that if the integrity it comes into question, there's nothing left. There's nothing to book for bookmakers. There's no attendance. There's no viewership or radio listenership. The integrity has to be there for everything else to flourish. So yeah, I really would encourage the leagues to take a strong second look at what they're doing right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I truly believe the same thing. That's crazy. And so I have a question for you on the recent scandals then. Like we're talking the recent ones. We're talking the Chauncey Billups stuff that's involved with the gambling there. Some people, the casual fan, will say that they've reached out to me even. They're like, well, not just the sports betting stuff, but the actual gambling and like operating these illegal casinos, essentially underground casinos and so forth. I guess I would love to get your take on that component, because to me, it almost feels like it was an athlete or a former athlete, a coach, whatever. These are athletes that are involved in these things. But what's your thoughts on that, since it wasn't specific to sports gambling? It was operating an illegal ring.
Yeah, well, the poker scandals are separate, and that's a little bit different, and I'll get back to that. But some of the proposition scandals that have taken place over the last year or so have been really surprising to me and alarming. I've never been an advocate of proposition wagering on college sports. I did wind up doing it the last several years of my career, but I was opposed to it. By the end, though, I had to do it to keep up with the Joneses because I was just losing too much business with people going elsewhere. So I wound up taking college proposition wagering on, the bowl games and the playoff games and the Final Four and so forth. But for the most part, I've never been an advocate of props on college athletes. Ironically, I put up a prop in 1985 at Caesar's Palace that really had an impact on the proposition industry, and that was the prop of will William the Refrigerator Perry score a touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And Coach Ditka of the Bears had said publicly that the Fridge would never touch the ball again, but of course he did score a touchdown in the first half of that game, and Caesar's Palace got tremendous publicity. I, as a bookmaker, lost a lot on that prop, and I tell the story in the book. But the next day, the chairman of Caesar's World called me, and I thought the end was near, but instead he congratulated me and thanked me for the attention and the publicity. And he said that no amount of money could have generated the attention for Caesar's Palace that you did, young man. And I was flabbergasted, but I got it. The light went off, and I said, my gosh, I realize now the power of sports marketing and what sports marketing can do for a property or an industry.
That's
so, yeah.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, the Fridge prop was not the first prop in Las Vegas. We booked things like who would score the first touchdown, or what different point spreads by quarter or margins of victory and so forth. But the Fridge prop put proposition wagering on the map, and it just exploded and kept growing and growing every year since.
So interesting. So I want to, because you're so skilled in this, and I know that these scandals are probably you don't want this image, because that there's a beautiful side to it too, or there could be a positive side to this whole thing. That's obviously what you're so good at what you do. You've seen the good in it. Talk to us about that, because I think that the perception in the outside world is just it's everything's rigged. All these prop bets, everything's rigged. And I know it's not. Mm-hmm. As a sports fan and as someone who covers the game and has done it for the last 18 years, it's covers all the sports. It's I know there's not, but I would love it from your perspective. Someone who's been in the bookkeeping industry for a while, you've been there, you see the money that's being thrown, but you can see the positives of sports gambling too. And that the game's not necessarily all rigged, so to speak.
No, I think that the integrity of the game is much, much greater, actually, than most people think. And I get attacked with those types of questions everywhere I go, including with my old friends in Pittsburgh. Sure. I go back for a family function or a high school reunion or for whatever reason, I see my old friends, and they don't believe me when I tell them, no, the games are very legitimate, and the improprieties are extremely rare and few and far between. But these proposition scandals, though, in the last couple of years really shook me, though, because as I started to get into a little bit earlier, that the college proposition wagering, I think that the risk is great and the temptation is too great, and these kids are far too young to be dealing with that, with wagering on their individual performances and getting letters and texts and social media calls and threats after the fact, and so forth. But the pro proposition wagering now has become such a popular event, and it's a leisure activity now enjoyed by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of fans across the country now. So it's a very, very difficult problem to fix. I've been asked by a lot of friends and industry people calling me saying, what can we do about these props? And I'm reluctant to say don't offer proposition wagering. It's a legitimate wagering opportunity for many fans, and it's a legitimate business offer for a menu item for many gaming companies and who did nothing wrong. They're trying to do the right thing by trying to monitor these things, trying to inform the integrity monitoring services out there or the leagues themselves. So it's I hate to see the industry and the fans be hurt by a drastic step like that, but there are certain things, though, that are go too far, and the integrity monitoring now has become such a hot issue around the gaming industry and around the different state regulators that it's something that needs to be enacted in a big way. I didn't think we needed it in Nevada. We didn't. We did it ourselves. The bookmakers were the watchdog. Today, the menus are so expanded, the opportunities are so expanded, and the old formula just doesn't work.
Absolutely, it doesn't work. But it's interesting because, I wish I could. I hope I can clip that out and make sure to share it with other people, because it's not all tainted. It's not, but it does make you wonder, right? It makes you wonder a little bit. Some of those things going on. You're like, hey, wait, did the Jazz really lose in 1998 to 99 with the Bulls? Like I'm thinking about back then when I was a kid, and I'm like, what was some funny business going on? Like there was a couple missed calls because the shot clock went off with Howard Isley, and I'm thinking back when I was in 5th grade, and I'm like, was there money being spent there too? Like you start going through this rabbit hole, and you start questioning. But I would love, as a competitor, I know for a fact that as a competitor myself, someone who's competed in sports at a variety of levels, I know what I played in. It was real. It was authentic. I know what I'm doing there. And so I choose to believe that it's good. There's more good than there is bad. And I think there's stuff that's bad in any industry, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah. And ironically, I was at the Raiders Broncos game 2 weeks ago. I don't watch. I probably watched as much sports as anybody for 40 years because I always had multiple TVs in my office. They were on all day. I constantly was watching sports, and including at home. But now that I've been retired for a few years, I don't watch much sports at all. And I'm surprised about that. I thought I would be still as big a fan as I ever was, but that hasn't proven to be true. I seem to always find other things to do. But nevertheless, my wife's from Denver. We bought a great ticket package for at a charity event, including the Bronco game when they came to Las Vegas. So we went to the game, and the game was all but over in the fourth quarter. The Broncos were way ahead. Kenny Pickett came into the game, an old Pitt quarterback, so my guy theoretically, and he led the team down the field for a quick touchdown in the closing minutes. Got the ball back, drove into scoring position again, and kicked a field goal with a couple seconds remaining, and to cover the spread and push the total over on a meaningless field goal. And the outcry was unbelievable. First of all, the only people left in the stadium for the most part was Bronco fans, which was about half the stadium. And I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to somebody and I heard this roar, and then it hit me. I said, oh my God, he's going to cover the spread right now on that. And I knew immediately that there'd be an uproar. And of course there was. But I don't believe that there was anything wrong. As long as there's time on the clock, I respect the team that keeps fighting till the final second.
It's so, dude, that's so funny. It reminds, just a couple weeks ago, I had Jay Paterno on the podcast, Joe Paterno's son, and he was talking about a thing with his dad in one of the games. They were up by 21, got down to like the goal line, and he decided to kneel it like 3-4 straight times, and the crowd booed. And I guess Joe Pa didn't know why, and Jay told the story of why. And he goes, well, Dad, you didn't cover the spread or something of that nature. And he didn't realize what that was back then. But then he started to understand, like, the crowd was booing. So it's just interesting to see, the crowd knows. There's people out there, they know what's going on.
Yeah. I used to have a shirt I used to wear, good teams win, great teams cover.
Oh, I love that. So talk to me about your experience as a bookie, though. Like, what goes into it from your perspective when you're making the lines and you're like trying to handle all this? And like I've always man, I used to get so angry because I'm like, how does Vegas know this? Like, I'm like every person who thinks that they're a sports fan. Oh, I played sports. I've covered sports. I know sports. So I can make a ton of money betting on sports. I'm like, oh, they're totally going to beat them by more than 8 points, or they're going to beat them by more than, 2.5. Sure. They're going to beat them by a field goal or more. And then it's like, they miss an extra point or something. You're like, oh my gosh, they're only going to win this game by 2 points. How did Vegas know this is going to happen maybe before it even happened? So like, I used to do that, and you go through those little things. Yeah. I guess from your perspective, though, setting those things and kind of putting things in place prior to those games, what is the structure for you?
Well, a lot of things have become automated, and there's so much more technology involved in establishing point spreads today. In the old days, and in the 80s and 90s, when I was at Caesar's Palace and Las Vegas Hilton, much of the work was manual. We had our own power ratings, and that we managed manually. We bounced things off one another. We compared notes until arriving at what we thought was a two-way number. Now, when we say a team's going to win by 7, that doesn't actually mean we think that they're going to win the game by 7 points. We think that the favorite -7 and the underdog +7 will get something close to two-way wagering handle on both sides at that point. But in the real world, it doesn't work that way. In almost every game, the bookmaker goes into almost every game with a vested interest in the outcome of that game. So I always felt like I had a bet on every game on the board, every game that we were offering. Today, though, through computer technology, you have the ability to see point spreads elsewhere. You see what your colleagues' numbers are. You see what international numbers are, both offshore in the Caribbean and perhaps in the UK or elsewhere. And you don't want to be outside those parameters. In general, you're going to open a game inside those parameters. But if you disagree and there's numbers between 7 and 9 on a game, you might open somewhere in the middle, but you're not going to be less than 7 or higher than 9 in all likelihood. For a credible bookmaker to do that would be knowing that you're going to get one-sided action.
So do you enjoy this? Because that feels like a spreadsheet galore all the time, and you're like an Excel spreadsheet, right? All the time, it's doing numbers and math. And is that kind of how your brain functions? Is just like numbers all the time?
Yeah, ironically, no, it's not.
Oh, really?
It should be. Yeah, it should be. And but no, I always had great probabilities and statistics guys with me. But I personally was not one of them. But I did recognize that I needed that input. I needed a great IT guys. I needed great probabilities and statistics guys, and I needed great PR and marketing guys with me. And I was fortunate enough to always have the ability to bring in folks with talents in those areas. And I think that if I did one thing well, it was managing input from all different areas.
Oh, that's awesome. You got yourself a team and you were able to get them to a well-oiled machine, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Art, I have a question too. I know this is interesting because as a bookie, you get paid when you win, right? Like when everybody else loses, that's where you start cashing in. But I do want to know if you have any success stories from clients. Was there any good success stories that made you happy to see somebody actually won? I mean, that means you didn't get your money in, but is there any success stories there that can make the general public be like, actually, maybe I do have a shot at this? Or is it
Well, there definitely are people that win at sports gambling. Sports gambling's margins for the theoretical advantages for the house are much less than most other casino games. And it's the most expensive department to run also. So profitability in sports gambling is not as great as most people would anticipate. And many operators are learning that across the country when everybody rushed to get in the sports gambling business. And as taxes and fees keep escalating and escalating, there's not much room left at the end of the day. but yeah, I miss it now. Now that I'm out of it, I was pretty burnt out by the end. But I miss the grind. I miss the action. I miss the roar of the crowds that I'm hearing, that I could hear from my office. I miss dealing with the high end customers. But yeah, sure. There was people that won, and not so many that I celebrated. but
Yeah, sure.
but I tell the story in my book about my uncle, Pittsburgh Jack Franzi, who was a 60-year gambler that made his living gambling, and he was one of the best in the business, and made a great career, great life for himself, all of his life virtually. And there's others like him. I know a lot of people that have made a lot of money and are very successful sports gamblers.
No, that's I'm sure you don't want to celebrate too many of them, but I just was asking. Now, I would say one of my favorite things to do, even to this day, when I don't gamble anymore, but I still, when I'm in Vegas, I'll go chill at a sports book, watch some stuff. But I love UFC fights, Art. I love when the UFC is going and people got money on it. They put it on the big screen. I'll chill there, drink my Diet Coke, and just watch some stuff. But like, people get, man, it's the roar or the dislike. They're just heartbroken with one big punch. I mean, I've seen a couple of those, like a knockout that was unexpected, and then people are just like, all of a sudden they thought it was going their way. One punch just changes it. And it's like, oh man, it's entertaining, man.
See, I used to, when I was promoting boxing and running the Hilton network of sportsbooks, I used to tell everyone at every opportunity, including in the pre-fight press conferences, that boxing and gambling go hand in hand. They support one another. They work for each other. And watching a boxing match, this was before the UFC explosion, of course. But watching a boxing match, just waiting for the unanticipated, waiting for that next turn of events, the next big punch is kind of similar emotionally and psychologically to waiting for the next turn of the cards.
Oh, it's so true. Like, I mean, even today, I love so boxing is my favorite sport. Right? I used to be a boxer, so I even today I can see that, because like the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder matchups of like the new era, like those are like, you're just like anxious for 12 rounds, like what punch is going to lay them out, like you don't know. And if you have money on that, it's just like, dude, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, it is. It's a tremendously fun industry. And I don't mean to bad rap the product, the games, or the leagues too much, a little bit, because I think that there's some room for improvement right now that's necessary. But I agree with you that there's nothing more fun than going to a big event in Las Vegas, having money riding on it, going to dinner after the game or after the fight. It's a great time.
Absolutely. Well, the last question I got for you, Art, in regards to just gambling and so forth, just with all of your experiences, like when a scandal breaks, which I'm sure there will be more that come out, like as time goes on, with your experience, what are the first three questions that you ask to separate facts from, I guess, the noise, so to speak? So like if we as the fan base are just kind of out there, what should we be asking ourselves to kind of try to separate some of the stuff, to kind of like pick it all together, so we don't just automatically just assume it's all a hoax?
Wait a minute. I'm not sure I understood the question. I'm sorry. Run that by me again.
So if a scandal breaks out,
yep,
and you're like, oh my goodness, and I think everybody just assumes the worst. Like they're like, everything's just a hoax. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Okay.
What are some of the questions you would ask yourself to try to separate the noise from the facts? Like, where do we find the facts here?
Well, what I would do if I was in the business, number one, I would have my staff get all the printouts, all the data records that you could find on that event. I would look at the opening point spread and the closing point spread and all line movement in between, and who wagered on that game, and what records we have on that event. So I would look to analyze the situation from my personal bookmaking operation to see if I was impacted, or if there was any evidence of irregularities, and if there was, then we would follow up from there. Now this was a long state point shaving scandal in the mid 90s, but we did exactly what we were supposed to do. We notified the Nevada Gaming Control Board, and in my case, corporate security was notified first, casino management, and then the Nevada Gaming Control Board. We filmed everything. We kept all the printouts. We did everything legit, that we were supposed to do. Unfortunately, a few years later, and this is another story for another day, but unfortunately, the NCAA, whom we had a working relationship with, in the spirit of cooperation, turned on the Nevada gaming industry and tried to have sports wagering on college sports shut down. And they were this close to accomplishing that. Nevada had to fight back, and we prevailed at the end of the day, luckily.
Wow. Got that crazy, huh? Holy cow.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Well, Art, I truly do appreciate your time. I do want to know, when this book is available, right, The Bookie, and it's available to the public, where can our listeners find a copy for themselves of this book so they can read more about your story and learn more now that they're excited about it from hearing your stories here on the show?
Well, the pre-sales are available now.
Okay.
Through HarperCollins, Amazon, and some other sites. So the pre-sales are going pretty good right now.
Okay, so I'll have that here. So the listeners here, you guys have already probably looked at the description of the podcast to find out who I'm even talking to today. So you see the links there at the bottom. Check the links out to the book. Get yourself a copy. And Art, I just really do appreciate your time, sir. And I really wish you the best, man. I really do appreciate you just taking the time to chat with me and the audience and let us know more about your insights. So I look forward to seeing what you do in the future with your retirement, kind of chilling. Maybe you write some more books again in the future. Can't wait to see you, man.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation. Really good questions and a very good discussion. Thanks.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother. For all those listening, make sure to tune in next week. We'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.